Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We'll now start with the first session for the conference, which is on copyright and entertainment. It's going to feature 2 papers on the topic, and Amba is going to introduce you to everyone who's on stage.
The moderator for this session is Mr. Siddharth Datta, partner at the leading law firm Amachan Mangaldas in Kolkata. We have with us today presenting papers Mr. Prashant Panday. Mr. Prashant Panday is Executive Director and CEO of Entertainment Network India Limited, the company behind Radio Mirchi. He will speak on the emergence of the statutory license and how it's the key to convergence and new media flourishing. We also have Mr. Arun C. Mohan, Advocate of the Madras High Court, presenting a paper. He has been involved in the litigation of prominent IP disputes such as the TS versus Bajaj patent dispute, the Consim Info versus Google case, and in various recent John Doe orders. He will also speak, today he will be speaking on Bollywood amendments on compulsory royalty sharing. Thank you for being with us today, and we can start the session.
Thank you to all the organizers for this session. I invite Prashant to first speak with regard to his main focus is going to be statutory licensing and a level playing field. 2 quick thoughts for your consideration: whether the term statutory licensing is itself correct, because statutory licensing has a totally different meaning in Indian law, and the fact that any licensing which provides in the statute, for example, simple license, is not called a statutory license. This is also a license, and so why called statutory licensing? Secondly, as far as the level playing field is concerned, do you think that the bargaining power has actually been addressed in the right sense, or it has restricted the freedom of contract, with notwithstanding the fact that the royalty, if any, has now got changed to royalty and any other consideration, making consideration very important part of that contractual relationship. Prashant.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. The disadvantage I have is that I am not a law graduate, but I also believe, I also believe that's a big advantage. So I'll try and dwell on the advantage part of it. I come from a business background. I represent Radio Mirchi, which is a big user of music copyrights. And I'm going to talk about the subject of statutory licensing, largely with respect to how radio broadcasters have, looked forward to it, how they have gone about their lives in the absence of statutory licensing, and how they look at statutory licensing changing things in the future. I was lucky to work with Professor Gopal Krishnan, actually, when he was in the core group, and I remember making a presentation to him on this subject about 7 or 8 years back, and it's taken a long time. The Indian system takes a long time, but I think eventually, at least with respect to statutory licensing, I think it has delivered something which is a very good law. It's an international law, and I think it makes a lot of sense. But what I want to dwell on today is the background and why the need for statutory licensing was felt. As a user of copyrights, what is the problems that the radio industry was facing in the absence of statutory licensing? So I'll just spend maybe 10 minutes on that, and then a few minutes on understanding in our perception what the scope of this statutory licensing is, and why it should not be a matter of anxiety to any of the copyright owners, and why it should only be a question of access, as Professor Gopal Krishnan called it in his presentation, and nothing else. So that's what my focus is going to be. Let me give you a backdrop on how the radio industry came about, since most of you are not from the radio industry. We guys used to operate radio business, radio stations, small 2-hour shows and 4-hour shows on all India radio frequencies from 1996 to I think about 1999. And at that point in time, we had problems with the copyright societies even then. I remember that I've read papers which say that there was litigation started sometime around then, and fortunately at that point in time I think good sense prevailed on both sides, and I certainly I'm not going to claim here that the radio broadcasters have been fabulous businessmen, and it's the music industry which is the only one which is responsible for the mess. But at that point in time, both sides agreed to work together, and they agreed on a certain commercial rate for radio broadcasting. Just give you some numbers, try and see if you can keep them in your mind. It just helps to set the background right. So radio plays music. Obviously, in a full hour, it does not play all music. It has chat, it has, I know, a lot of advertising. I sympathize, empathize, everything with you. What to do? We can always blame the poor economy for that. We have to cut prices and take more volumes. But let's say in an hour, it's about like 30 minutes or 35 minutes of music, or maybe 40 minutes. And then, if you take a 24-hour day, then maybe it's about 18 hours of music, thereabouts, roughly, and 6 hours of everything else. So we obviously pay royalty for 18 hours, not for 24 hours, because that's the amount of music we are consuming. That's called needle hour. In other words, it's the number of minutes or number of hours of music actually consumed in an hour. That's called needle hour. So in an hour, it may be 40 minutes of needle hour or whatever. So the rate fixed at that point in time, mutually agreed between the two sides, was 160 rupees per needle hour. Now, this may mean nothing to you, but let me just convert it to some kind of an annual number. If we were a 24-hour radio station playing 18 hours of music, 160 rupees would come to somewhere around maybe 10-12 lakh rupees per annum. And this is per city, because radio is a local medium, it goes per city. So think of it like this, that till right about the end of 1999 or beginning of 2000, we were paying about 10 or 12 lakh rupees in that ballpark for all royalties, which includes performing rights, which includes sound recording, and all of that was the background. Now what happened is that privatization happened in 2000, and the first radio station came up in July 2001. And in that period of time, just about a year or thereabouts, a year and a half maybe, when we talked to PPL was at that point in time the sole industry body. The rate they gave us was 1500 rupees per needle hour. So it's gone from 160 rupees to 1500 rupees per needle hour. Now, the whole crux of my point that I'm going to make over here is that there is a monopoly in the music industry. Now, I don't mean monopoly in the conventional sense, because all of you know there are actually too many music companies, so there's no monopoly in that sense. But there is something what I call a natural monopoly, which means that if you want to play a particular song or a particular album, then that is a monopoly, because if I want that album, then I have nowhere to go to that particular label. So it's a natural monopoly. And since radio broadcasters rely almost entirely on music, they are on the wrong side of the table on this subject. So I'm just giving you how the monopoly is played out and building the case as to why the statutory licensing was required. And I'm also then going to dwell on say that why it should not be a matter of worry for anybody. So 1500 rupees converts to 1 crore rupee per annum. So it's gone up from 10-12 lakh rupees to 1 crore rupee. Now obviously the question that comes in your mind is, surely there were negotiations, surely they met you, surely they told you why the rates have gone up so much. But remember, it's a monopoly. It owed us no such meeting, and no such meeting actually took place. They may have a meeting or two, but those meetings were more like, we want 1500 rupees. You call that a meeting? Yes, we had a couple of meetings. So think about this. Now, the other thing is that this same rate they were demanding for all towns, all the markets. So whether it is a Calcutta or a Mumbai or a Delhi or a Jabalpur, they wanted 1500 rupees per needle hour, which is 1 crore rupee. So let me just take an extreme example. A case of Jabalpur, the entire market, unfortunately, was not even, it's about 2.5 crores today in the radio advertising market, the radio market, the users, my market over there, my industry's market is 2.5, 3 crores over there. When it started off 5 years back, it was probably less than 1 crore. And there were 4 radio broadcasters. So if the music industry had its way, and I'm talking only PPL right now, I'm talking only sound recording, I'm not talking performance right now, then they would have got 4 crore rupees from us for Jabalpur in a market which was probably 1.5 crores in size. This is just an example, but if you thought 1500 was too much, then just wait and see what happened in 2006. The demand went up to 2400 rupees. Now 2400 rupees, my calculator actually malfunctioned, it goes so high. I did some mathematical number and it came to some 1.6 crore rupees per player per market, which means the same Jabalpur has now gone up to 6.5 crores. Market unfortunately has not even grown by the same amount. So this is the backdrop, and nobody wants to negotiate. There was a situation where you either pay or you are held as an infringer, and what follows thereafter is something that I'll tell you in just a moment. For ENIL as a company, if today I was to go by that rate, then I would be paying anywhere between 50 and 60 crore rupees for just sound recording. And then I had IPRS, came in separately, and they wanted 1000 rupees which means another 75 lakh rupees, 65 lakh rupees, something on that order. So 20 crore rupees per annum. So I would have to pay 85 crore rupees per annum if I was to do any kind of voluntary business with the music industry. And obviously we could not. And as if this was not enough, the music industry PPL wanted 20% of revenues, and IPRS wanted 10% of revenues. So between them, they wanted 30% of our revenues. Now, this was blatant disregard for what is happening worldwide. Now, worldwide, with the exception of a few countries in Western Europe, worldwide, the total royalty paid by radio broadcasters to the entire music industry is anywhere between 0 and 4% of revenues. If you go to the US of A, then it is, I guess, about 3%. It's paid only to the, in the form of performing rights. There is no sound recording in the US. If you go to South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, I'm talking of countries where radio is developed as a medium, it's done well. It's again between 2 and 4%. There are countries like China, which obviously don't have much respect for copyrights, where it would be typically 0. But if you go to the Middle East, and again, not surprising, it's pretty much close to 0 if it is not that exact number. So, but the moot point is that anywhere in the world, it is between 0 and 4%. And the only exception, let me give you one country, is the UK, where you add up performing sound recording, you get to about 10% of revenues. But one of the things that the industry there does in return for charging you 10% is that it gives you the web license and the mobile license free of cost. So it's a bundled license that they worked on, and today I'll tell you about how in the new age media, one of the points in this subject over here today, it's such a nightmarish situation. Whatever happened in radio is now happening in the web business as well. So no negotiations, arbitrary demands, and if you don't do that, then obviously what they would do is that they would charge you a criminal case on you, treat you like a petty thief with no regard to your parentage or your credentials. I represent the Times of India, which is only about 175 years old. It's just the largest media company in the country. It has the power to make a lot of exposés and bring to light a lot of the rubbish that happens in this country, but unfortunately it can't do much to protect itself. So we went to the Copyright Board, and even today the Copyright Board is not formed yet, even under the Amendment Act. The last date apparently is June of next year, and hopefully thereafter it will become a continuously sitting body. But in the past it has been typically sitting about 3 times or 4 times in a year. It sits every 3 months or 4 months, sits for 3 or 4 or 5 days. You barely get half a day or 1 day to have your subject discussed over there. The members of the Copyright Board would keep changing in every meeting, except for the chairman, who remain constant. And the other members used to be typically law secretaries and those kind of people from various states. Obviously, they're all very busy people, so we never got a consistent panel. And even if we got one, it would be 3 or 4 months later. And I think it's impossible to conduct any kind of proceedings in this kind of situation. But be that it may, in 2002, we got an order which said that the Copyright Board fixed the order. It said, you will pay 661 rupees per needle hour. That is about 50 odd lakh rupees per annum per station. Unfortunately, it was applicable to all cities, small or big. The music industry was quick to grab it, even while they made some protestations and went to some court saying that this is too low a rate, but they were very happy to grab it because it helped them great, because at this rate in Jabalpur, the industry was still paying them 2 crore rupees, way above its own revenues. So why would they not grab it? So this is just one of the reasons why, the radio guys have always been very exploited. Just to give you a backdrop, the entire radio industry is unprofitable. I mean, if things were not done, this industry would die very soon. It really has no future. My company is very profitable because we are the leaders, and I'll tell you about the media business, because in the media business it's very much dependent upon who the winner in the categories, and there is a disproportionate advantage we get. But if you look at the 44 other broadcasters in the radio industry, I doubt if even 4 or 5 of them are profitable. So that's the status of the radio industry. But apart from that, there was a lot of discriminatory practices that were being adopted by the music industry. So they would give rights to songs one at a time. They would give it to one radio station, not to another, under some pretext or the other. And what was really disturbing from a logistical point of view was that if you wanted to play music, you didn't know who to go to ask for the license. Because if you went to PPL, you found that it had a floating list of members. One day it was something, another day it was something else. And I think it was impossible to find out how many people you had to go to. And we had the perpetual fear that we may be infringing somebody's copyright because we thought that the label is part of BPL and it really is not part of BPL. And really, frankly, they couldn't care. I mean, if you infringe, then there was a criminal case against you. And, this crossed the bounds of decency. And I'm saying these words very carefully. One of the CEOs of another radio station, a woman CEO, they put a criminal case against her, and the poor thing had to, protect herself, to run. I mean, to hide till the time that you could tell the cops that, we have a case here, you can't arrest us, and let's follow it up in the courts. So this was all too common in those days. We used to live in perpetual fear of something or the other going wrong. We did not know what the license fee next would be. And we just could not understand how to go about this entire thing. And what was really bad was that in the courts, the music industry, and I'm sure Ashil, you'll get your turn to speak, the music industry would go hammer and tongs and say that radio kills music. It's because of radio, because they play the music that, we are not able to sell. Because if somebody wants to buy, this is a poor country, then they should just listen to radio. Why should they buy any music? And then they would give examples of how CD sales have crashed. And, they would say some 20-year-old film sold some 2 million or 4 million. And now they don't even sell 20,000 as if, But when it came to their a launch which their label was doing, then they would call us and say, please play it 15 times a day. It's shocking. It's truly shocking that, they would do that. In fact, the biggest music company in the country went so far as to have a legal clause inserted in the agreement that says, you will play my music minimum 40% of the time. And if you don't, then you'll still pay me 40% of the time. And guess what? They said, if you play 40% of the time, then we'll give you an incentive. You play 20% more free of cost. So, and it's a fact. There are radio stations in this country which play only that label's music 24 hours a day. They just play that because they've got it capped at 40 or 60%, and they're saying that that's the way it should be. So lots and lots of problems. This is the backdrop which happened. And let me tell you something, that while the radio industry has got a lot of relief from the Copyright Board and thereafter from various high courts and various Supreme Courts, and the Supreme Court, over various different cases, it's the same situation when it comes to new media. So when if you are talking about web streaming, for instance, if you are a Savan.com or a Ghana.com, one of those kind of players, then it's the exact same situation. The music industry does not offer you more than a 1-year contract. It asks you for minimum guarantees. It increases rates randomly. I know one particular company which has increased its rate with one web publisher by 400% in one year. The royalty that this company is expected to pay is now about 4 times of the revenues that it makes. So it's the same story all over again. And what is worse is that the web industry does not know how to take the subject forward because they don't have any expertise in. They don't know how to handle it. We've dealt with it for 20 years, but they're just like kind of babes in the wood, as it were. So what's happening is that now they're struggling. Some of them, and they're paying huge amounts. It's okay right now because their business currently is not based on profitability or even revenues for that matter. Their business is based on acquisitions. How many subscribers you have or whatever, and their valuation is determined by that. So they're happy. They're all building their listeners or whatever it is, hoping that one day they'll find somebody who will come and invest some money, and then they'll be able to protect their own investments. But it's the 2000 kind of scenario where the .com bust happened. I think if things are not corrected on the music websites front, the same thing is going to happen very soon because there are no revenues in that space right now. The music royalties are crippling to the least. Give you an example. Another example. We have a product called Mirchi Mobile. So essentially what we do is let's say if you have a Kolkata FM station over here, we pipe that through the old 2G pipelines of the telcos, as it were. So if you are, let's say, if you're on a tour to Jalandhar, and you want to listen to your favorite Kolkata station, you can and if you are a subscriber of a mobile company, then you can just dial a particular number. It's a vast service. You pay $10 a week, and you can listen to it for some 100 minutes or whatever. It's a product of that type. So the telecom companies are generating about 60-70 crore rupees on the back of this product called Mirchi Mobile. And let's call that the end consumer revenue or the end user revenue as it's called in the industry. Of course, we get a very small percentage of it, and that's a different debate. We'll have it some other day. But let's say we get about 10% of that number. The music industry, rightfully, I don't have any grudge against that, used to get about 14% at that time when we started off. So 14% of 60 crores, 70 crores is what they were making. This was a brand new product. and 14% of 60 crores is about 8.5 crores. 8.5 crores from just my company came out of the blue. We were paying 15 odd crores in FM licensing earlier. So, 50, 60, 70% just got added because of one product that we launched in the digital space. That just tells you how much money there is available to be made by everybody in the ecosystem if we can collaborate and cooperate. But one fine day, the music industry again decided 14% was not enough. Unilaterally decided it should be 20% or I think 21%. They increased it by 50%. So fine, 7 more percent gone to the music company, and between us and the telecom, the technology provider, we had to adjust our margins downward by 7%. So that's typically what's happening in new media. It's no different. In fact, it's something that is happening worldwide. Let me admit that. So you have heard stories of Pandora struggling and Spotify, big spot. They chose the name correctly, I think. And today what's happening is that the US Congress is now considering a law which says that why should the digital business be at any disadvantage compared to the terrestrial business. So they're considering introducing a law which says that it should be the same rates that apply to digital as well. There's also action happening on several other jurisdictions in this area. So this is the background. So it's not that we are grabbers and we want to say now we have the SL and we can do what we want to do. It's not that at all. It's just about now we have access to music. We have unfettered access to music. Anything gets published, we can pay it. We don't have to come to you because you're so fragmented, being monopolistic in behavior. We are protected from all of that. But we have to pay royalties, and that's the best part of it. You pay, you use, you pay. And the radio industry has never ever said, and no user industry, whether it's television, internet, no one has ever said that we want to play music for free. We're all willing to pay our fair share. We're willing to look at international benchmarks, and we're willing to pay accordingly. That's the whole objective of the statute licensing, and I'm grateful to people like Professor Gopal Krishnan who have actually helped in ensuring that this becomes a success and becomes a reality in the Act. Now, what does the statutory licensing clause 31D actually say? And it's very interesting what the parliamentarians had in mind when they passed this particular act. Because it says that all broadcasters, it covers all broadcasters who are desirous of broadcasting. The question is, what is the meaning of the word broadcast? And I think the meaning of the word broadcast is very nicely defined in the definition of the act itself, which basically says it's any communication to the public, be it in wireless form or in a wired form or whatever, and it includes too many and all of those kind of things. It's got many stuff in that definition that you can go through. But clearly, anyone who is a broadcaster is covered by the statutory licensing clause. It is not restricted to radio and television. And this is our interpretation. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. The reason I'm saying this is because there is some perception in some corners that there's one sub clause or whatever you call it, which says that the rates for radio and TV will be separate. Okay. So because radio and TV have been named in this particular clause or whatever you call it, there is a perception built that it does not cover web and mobile and other things. Now I beg to differ, because the reason television was brought in as a separate mention over here in the clause is because just before the bill was getting passed by the Rajya Sabha and then by the Lok Sabha, there was some amount of lobbying done by the television industry to get them specifically mentioned over there. And as part of that compromise, what was enacted was that the rates will be different. So that much, because radio already had an order, it had a 2% of revenues order from the Copyright Board, which came in 2010. So television just ensured that the same order wouldn't apply to them, or rather the music industry just ensured that the same order wouldn't apply to the television guys because they wanted probably higher number, and that's how the compromise was reached. So it only says that radio and television rates will be separate. So it does not say that there will be no rates given for web or for mobile or whatever. So our understanding very clearly is that the intention of Parliament was to make music access freely available to whoever wants to use the music and is willing to pay for the royalty, rates that are decided either voluntarily or fixed by the Copyright Board. And I think the only last point that I want to make is that for anyone who's not interested in getting the benefits of being a monopolist, there is nothing to worry. Because it only says that whatever rates the Copyright Board sets, if they tell you to pay something in advance, if they tell you to set up some bank guarantees, then that's what we will have to do. In fact, the Copyright Board order of 2010 does tell you to set up bank guarantees, and we've done that for PPL. We have no problem doing it for every single label that is there. But what we are sure to enforce is that this right is not taken away, because this right has been obtained by a long period of struggle, by almost 2 decades of struggle, and it's finally that we've got relief from the monopolistic tendencies of the music industry. My only suggestion is that rather than being embroiled in fights and controversies for 20 more years, I think it's important that we learn to work together. I think we should never forget that the primary constituency that all of us address are the creators. And if the likes of Javed Akhtar and Prasoon Joshi can be encouraged through monetary payments to have many more of them, then I think that's something that all of us will truly cherish. And that's what you see in every developed society, that the creators are taken care of very well. And we must make sure that we work together in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prashant, for an industry perspective and a bit of the business troubles that you go through while we just listen to the music.
And we face the music.
So, yeah, any questions?
Sir, this is Rajesh from SIMCA, South Indian Music Company Association. I would like you to clarify one point. When an ad is brought to a radio station, what is the percentage of commission that is given to an ad agency?
It's between 10 and 15%.
Thank you. 10 and 15% of commission is paid to some agent who brings music, who brings an ad to your station. But you are now told to pay 2% for the music on which the radio station survives.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let me explain that, if you allow me to. This is a common perception the music industry carries about the radio business or about any broadcasting business. That give them the music and they're in business. Unfortunately, the truth is far from that. And if that was not the case, then 40 of the 44 radio broadcasters would not be in losses. The radio broadcasting, the biggest cost in a radio broadcasting company is the cost of people. Because what goes behind what goes inside the studio, which you don't get to see, is that we have 350 radio jockeys and programming and music people who actually have to go through a whole lot of work to figure out what happens. The second biggest cost in a radio company is marketing. Because there is 1,000 songs that get produced every year in Hindi, and I think 2,500 songs in Bangla, and many more thousands in the south, and we have to filter all of them to figure out which one works and which one does not work. So there's a lot of marketing cost which goes. Now remember, this is a very competitive business in the media side. Media is a very fragmented business. So the other part of marketing which is so critical is that you have to do brand building. If today you can get the same music on Radio Mirchi and Radio City and Big FM and Red FM, then why should somebody choose to listen to Mirchi rather than listen to City? Is because you provide certain jocks, you provide a brand that people feel comfortable being part of, and you spend literally crores. Just to give an example, we spent close to 45 crore rupees last year on marketing. Because without that, you will not survive. It's not something that we do for the joy of spending money into thin air. It's do because it's a survival requirement. There is huge electricity costs. We spend 15 crores on electricity. Just to give an example of how big my sales team is, we have 350 people in sales. We do 300 crores of business. So that's less than 1 crore per person. Do you know how many sales people there are in Star TV? Star Plus? Star Plus is a company with about, 1,500 crores of turnover. It would have less than 50 people in sales, maybe 25 in sales. So the structure of the broadcasting industry, the structure of the radio industry is very different. And people in the music side, and I don't blame them, maybe we should have more interactions so we can talk to each other about our structures, is that there are many, many, many things which go into making a radio broadcasting. It is not only music, and therefore the comparison is invalid.
Okay, we're running short of time, but I think one more question, yes, yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. So I'm Ashutosh Upadhyay, second-year student, law student of Symbiosis International University. Sir, I just had a doubt regarding the music which is available on web, internet. So we have on many occasions seen that music comes out on web, releases on web prior it is out in the market. Are these web industries even paying royalties to the music industries, or are they doing it illegally?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, as part of an evolving media landscape, the digital business is gaining a lot more prominence than traditional forms of media. So you're right that a lot of music actually breaks on the website. Now, if it's breaking on an Indian web publisher, then chances are, in fact, I can be 100% sure that they have a royalty arrangement with the copyright owners, and they are paying according to that arrangement. It's usually a minimum guarantee and a streaming cost, and they are paying as per that. However, if it is breaking on a web publisher located somewhere else in the world, then you can never be sure if they have any legal agreement or not. In fact, many times we see foreign-based web publishers actually putting out a live Radio Mirchi feed somebody calls and says, you know what, we can hear your radio Hyderabad station online and all that kind of thing. Thank you very much for it. And then we get really worried because, you know, it's illegal. So we then go and shut it down or serve them a notice. But I'm sure the music industry does the same thing, that there are a lot of web publishers who are putting it out illegally, especially those based in foreign shows. And that should be another reason why the Indian music industry should talk more in a more friendly manner with Indian web publishers so that, you know, this doesn't happen.
May I